Alright, in this video I want to talk about Ezekiel, that prophet in the Old Testament. He was active on behalf of the Israelites in diaspora, and actually he and his dad's name was called Buzi, I believe, or in some translations Budi. The whole image of the Buddha is based on Ezekiel's dad and him, who were both priests that acted on behalf of the Israelite people. But I'll talk about that history another time. In this video, I want to point out that the prophet Ezekiel can teach us a lot, because Christ gave him many parables in the forms of dreams and visions, things that aimed onto the future. I mean, things that would become relevant to the future. And those that have understanding can get it. Now, about the prophet Ezekiel, when you read Ezekiel chapter 37, the Most High took the prophet and brought him to a valley. And the valley was filled with bones, human bones, or rather human skeletons that were scattered everywhere. So the prophets thoughts were, what am I doing here? This is a dead place. They're filled with skeletons. I mean, these people's lives are over. And the Lord commanded him, prophesy, or let's say decree, that flesh will come on those bones. He did it. And he also decreed that the skin would come upon the flesh. He did this, and what happened? When he decreed this, the skeletons came together. They became whole, and the organs began to grow back into them. The muscles and the skin came over them. But those were still dead bodies. Then the Most High told them, command the Spirit, that's the Holy Spirit, to come into them. And he did it, and after he decreed it, all his bodies stood up. It was a very big army. Now, what can you learn from this parable? You can read it for yourself in Ezekiel chapter 37. There are going to be times in your walk by faith you will encounter death situations. I'm not talking about a literal physical death like Ezekiel encountered, but you will encounter toxic situations, desperate situations, this situation with a lot of despair. Maybe a hurricane passed by and people lost everything. Maybe it's a big financial crisis, people about to lose their homes. I don't know what exactly you will encounter. You will encounter such situations. What Ezekiel did is what most people do, is what common people do. They look at what's around them and they think, what can I do with this? I can't do anything. They look at their own human weakness. And that's realistic to acknowledge your own human weakness, but the Most High changed his perception. The Most High said, prophesy. And he agreed with Christ, with the Most High, and he prophesied. And there was movement. His word had movement. But here's the thing. There was movement and things shifted, but there was still no real activity. Then the Moses told them, command the Spirit to come into them. And it happened. And then there was movement. They became alive. You can learn two things of this. As a believer, you walk by faith, you decree and declare, you pray, do all of that. But above all, the Holy Spirit must be present to energize what you decree. Okay? Because you, as a believer, decreeing and praying will have an impact. Anyway, maybe not the way you expect, but you'll have an impact. But if you want this to remain and endure in a dynamic way, make sure you're powered by the Holy Spirit. That's why you agree with Christ. So that when you pray, when you decree and you declare, your prayers, decrees, declarations are in line with Christ. Because Christ only brings life and abundance. Sometimes it happens, you're praying and praying and praying, and you feel frustrated. And you think, Lord, why, what is this? Am I in sin or anything like that? No, it has nothing to do with sin. Okay? It has to do that the outcome you're longing for may not glorify God. The outcome you're longing for may be even dishonorable to you. but you just don't see it. Okay? So you still don't see any dynamic movement. So what do? You call upon the Holy Spirit. That means you consult the Holy Spirit, and then the Holy Spirit is going to direct your movements, and you're going to see dynamic. You're going to see a dynamic in the situation. That's what the Prophet Ezekiel taught us. Basically, that's what the Holy Spirit taught us through the Prophet Ezekiel. Too many of you are still in the beginning phase. When the prophet saw all those dead bones, thinking, what can I do with this? I used to be there also. Prophesy, decree, declare, pray. But above all, move with the flow of the Holy Spirit. And you can only do that when you agree with Christ. When you agree with Christ, that's the key, so that the power begins to flow out of the Holy Spirit through you. Because remember, the Holy Spirit is inside of you already. You just need to be in line with Christ, so that power flows through you and out of you, and then you go along with that flow. And that is what it means to walk uprightly. For us under the new covenant, that is what it means to walk in righteousness. That is what it means to live holy. Because you're whole. You rely upon the power which comes from the Holy Spirit. Okay? So learn that from the Prophet Ezekiel. There are more things you can learn from the Prophet Ezekiel, but in this video I'm talking about prophesying and remaining in the flow of the Holy Spirit. Why am I telling you this? Because the world also has its flow that the world wants you to follow. The world wants you to follow its flow, which will keep you trapped, which will bind you, and which will destroy you very quickly. The Holy Spirit wants you to follow His flow, because out of His flow only comes life and abundance. There's no destruction, no darkness, and no fear at all in the Holy Spirit. So fear must be something that's cast out of you a long time ago. There is no such thing as holy fear. They call it reverence in the British English. They have all these fancy words for it. There is no such thing as good fear, or holy fear, or righteous fear. No. There's something called faith and confidence. And because you have faith and confidence, you're overwhelmed by the greatness of God. That's what the fear of the Lord, that phrase means. No literal fear, because fear doesn't come from Christ. Come on. It's time you got to get over that pagan thinking of holy fear. Holy reverence. Get that crap out of your head, please. Well, that's it for now. Agree with Christ and learn from Ezekiel chapter 37. Decree, declare, pray, and move with the flow of the Holy Spirit.